I can remember, maybe Dennis, you can let me know if you remember, when you first heard the amazing words, all right, stop, collaborate, and listen. ICE is back with my brand new invention. Something grabs me, hold me tightly. Then I flow that a harpoon daily and nightly.
Will it ever stop? Yo, I don't know.
Turn off the lights.
And I'll glow. No, I never heard that before in my
To
life.
the extreme, I rock a mic, light up the stage, and wax a candle like a chump. I don't know.
I'm gonna call you Vanilla Jason.
Vanilla Jason. Vanilla Jason. No, I remember those words, and we're making fun or having fun of this incredible song just because of that phrase. All right, stop, collaborate, and listen.
Fun fact.
Listen.
Fun fact. Fun fact. Vanilla Ice talks about. Sorry, interrupted. But fun fact. Vanilla Ice talks about having a 5.0. I had a Mustang convertible in high school. So you got to believe that I used to listen to Vanilla Ice.
You had to listen to Vanilla Ice.
Yes, with the top down. Yeah.
I did not have a convertible, but I had a 1966 Ford Mustang.
Woo!
No joke.
Nice.
Turned 18, took out a little loan, bought a 66 Mustang.
You're one of those rich kids.
Oh, yeah, no. That was not it. Well, today on the podcast, we are diving into the world, the art of listening. How can we as communicators, because every one of us, we're communicators. It's not just people who stand on a stage or get behind a camera. It's every day in your relationships. It's every day when you're parenting. It's every day with your friendships. It's every day at work when you're doing presentations or you're sitting in meetings. We are all communicators. And one of the keys, the unbelievable foundations, is being a great listener. So today, let's talk about listening. Let's talk about listening. Because reality is your words matter. And this podcast exists because we want to encourage you to help you speak with people, not at them. And so we want to inspire you to breathe life in the people and not dismantle them with your words. So much a part of that is listening. Listening. What comes to mind when you think of being a great listener, Dennis?
Ooh, man. There are quite a few people that I can remember are really good at listening. But I think the most important thing that I think of is just in my own life, I'm so bad at this. And I think I have got to get better at just keeping my mouth shut. Because I want to say, even right here, right now, I'm like, ooh, how can I contribute? How can I contribute? How can I contribute? And all of my energy, my energy is building up into what I'm going to say.
Right.
And none of my energy is into comprehending what people are saying.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think those are that's what comes to my mind is
so
keep
much,
your mouth shut.
I think so it's true. And so many times we think of listening because we want to listen so we can fix something.
Oh yeah.
Give me your problem, and then I'm going to give you the answer or the solution. Or we can fix someone. And so, so much of what we consider conversation is merely just interrupting each other. It's like, hey, I just really need to talk to you, but it's like boom, 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 boom. A couple of podcasts ago, we had a friend of the podcast, Dr. Tom Rundell, on. And years ago, I remember sitting down with him, and I asked him what he thought listening was. And he said, listening is to keep company with someone. Listening is to keep company with someone. Maybe a cooler, hipper way. Even though, yesterday I was standing around with my 18-year-old's girlfriend, 20-year-old, 22-year-old, and they said a phrase that I had never heard of. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And they're like, Dad, it means to leave. And I was like, why don't you just say to leave? Anyways.
Was it I'm going to bounce?
It wasn't a bounce. It was like,
I'm going to jet.
What was it?
I'm dipping.
I'm dipping.
I'm so old.
I'm so old because dipping in my years meant something totally
it's
something
when
else.
you put something in your lip, right?
It was like chewing tobacco and all
grab
that.
it out of the back pocket and you put it in there right there. And
So weird, yeah. Except back in the day, I used bubble gum or what was
Big League Chew.
Big League Chew. Anyways, we're getting off topic.
Oh boy.
To keep company with someone is I'm tracking with you. I'm tracking with you. I am walking in step with you. And we can feel that a lot in our relationships when we know that somebody is walking in step with us. We're like, okay, I can call them day or night anytime because I know that they're going to be tracking with me. They're up to date on my life. They know what's going on. And so that's what happens. And so learning to listen well doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It requires discipline, effort, intentionality. But you get better with time if you work on it. And so that's the hard part. Like, how are we going to work on it? Because being a better listener hangs like not on just like one conversation, but developing patterns and habits in every conversation.
Yeah, and it's super hard now because we're pulled. I heard this today. Somebody was saying I get pulled in so many directions, and I thought, man, if that does not define my life, I don't know what does. Right? Like I get pulled in so many directions, so it's hard to be walking with this person and tracking with them, and then in this situation tracking with this person and tracking here and tracking there. So you're getting pulled. So basically, you can't really be 100% in everything because there's always so many other things that are going on. Balls in the air. You could use so many different analogies.
Yeah.
But reminds me of a quote by Jim Elliot. Jim Elliot, missionary to Ecuador a long time ago. He said one time, "Wherever you are, be all there."
Wow.
And so, like in conversations, where if you're in this conversation, be all there. If you're in a conversation with your wife, be all there. If you're in a conversation with your kids, be all there. And one of my major things that I can't do is most of the time be all there.
Right. And we talked about that a couple podcasts ago.
Yeah.
Just with the basics of communication, like just sitting down, like this whole process of sitting down over coffee. Although this is not coffee, it's like water with like some type of sugar-free drink in it. Just to be honest, But how can we be all there? There's an old proverb that says, answering before listening is both stupid and rude. Like, wow. Okay.
I've never heard a proverb with stupid in it. I'm just saying.
Maybe it's an Irish proverb.
Probably.
It's Irish. So let's kind of dive into the idea of why is listening so important. Like, okay, come on. I mean, I think we know that like somewhere in us, but then if we were to actually do like a pure inventory of our listening skills, or if we were to sit down with our kids or our spouses or our, coworkers, would those inventories even come close to each other? That would be interesting. Why is listening so important? A couple thoughts. One, listening builds trust. It just really does. Mm-hmm. I mean, communication builds trust like across the board, even if it's bad communication. Years ago, our family had a ton of medical problems, and the medical bills just piled up. And so we had medical bills upon medical bills upon medical bills, and the phone calls were just like coming nonstop. And I'll never forget, one of my mentors sat down, and they're like, I know you don't answer those phone calls, but answer the phone calls. And even if it's bad news, you tell the person who wants the money for the medical bill that you don't have it all, at least give them something. Because even if it's bad or good, communication still builds trust. And so at least, you're talking, you're having that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason why we say I felt heard. Right?
Mm.
Like even if that person wasn't really listening, at least I want to give the impression that I want to feel heard no matter what is happening. Like that person may not even really be paying attention, but I want to at least feel like I'm being heard.
Exactly.
It's that important. But yeah, builds trust is huge. Building trust.
And it would be interesting to look at like history, the last, oh my goodness. 25 years. Communication has gone light years before, of where it was the previous 500 years. And so has the ability of us wanting to be heard, has that grown because of the rise of social media and internet and website and all that kind of stuff? Because 100 years ago, did the random Joe, random worker guy, did he want to be heard as much as we do nowadays? Or has that not changed, or has it changed? You see what I'm tracking with that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
That would be interesting. But listening builds trust, and we've all been a part of relationships or workplaces or wherever we're at, where we go, okay, man, I really know what's going on, or I really don't know what's going on. And so, why is listening so important? It builds trust. Two, listening reduces misunderstandings. I don't know if you've ever been a friend like on the other side of friends, or you've been a boss on the other side of employees, where one employee comes to you about this problem and then another employee comes to you about this problem, and you're like, this would all be done if you two just talked. Or if you just communicated. communicate the plan fully. It would just reduce the misunderstanding.
Yeah, family stuff is big time that happens, right? Like I'm not airing any family dirty laundry or
Right.
anything, but I mean, it's 100% of the time. It's like, did you talk to them? No, I just
No,
wanna,
not yet.
blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, I just wanted to complain to you, and you're like, okay, well,
Or it starts the thing when you're like, did you see Aunt Giselle's post? Like, what do you think she's trying to say through that?
I don't know, but Uncle Tom better watch out.
That one hits a little too close to
Oh,
home.
man.
So listening builds trust, reduces misunderstanding. Listening helps eliminate conflict.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of the same as the second one.
Yeah.
Reduce misunderstanding. Misunderstanding leads to conflict. So there you're fighting with each other over something that really isn't
Right.
even really an issue.
Not at
It's
all.
like a made up thing that because you didn't communicate correctly,
Right.
or you can't resolve it. Like,
Right.
Sometimes it's like an easy thing to fix.
Yeah.
Well, that's an easy fix.
Yeah.
But you think it's a big deal.
Right, and you think about how many nights people lose, how many hours of sleep people lose over conflict with their spouses, conflict with their kids, their parents, whoever. I mean, you think about all that conflict. If you could trace it back to just communicate, take the step in the very beginning to either communicate that good news or bad news, or what you're thinking or what you're not thinking. I mean, that's difficult. I can remember years ago, I was offered a job in Chicago. We lived in Detroit. And just the thought of telling my parents, I was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Because, they had grandkids and it'd be hard. And even though it's not that far, we knew they would love us and support us. But it was like, even the thought of telling them that. But communication helps with that process. So it builds trust, it reduces misunderstandings, eliminates conflict. Listening encourages empathy. Ooh, empathy's huge.
Yeah, I think it goes down to that I felt heard.
Exactly.
I felt heard. I feel like that person knows what I'm thinking about. I feel like they know what I'm feeling. They're putting themselves in my shoes. So therefore, their decisions are going to be made, hopefully with my best interest in mind, right?
Right.
That's not always the case, but that's, at least they know how I feel about the situation so that I can, so that they can help me resolve that situation. And that's what empathy kind of does. Empathy, sympathy, all that stuff that moves you to action based on how somebody else is feeling.
And that's why the part of empathy that's so important is just this face-to-face sit down. Because if you're purely communicating with someone over a phone or an email or through these, Facebook posts that you're talking about the situation, that's just going to keep it going and going until you sit down face-to-face. And then you can really be empathetic, because then you can hear their heart, you can see their heart, you can empathize with them.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you ever worked with middle schoolers. I'm sure you have. But most of the time, they're a little difficult.
They're a little bit difficult.
But as soon as you start sitting down and talking and listening to them and hearing all of the stuff that's going on deep down, then you understand why they act the way that they act. And so then you can actually, not just deal with all these symptoms on the outside, but help them with the actual issue. Oh, well, my mom and dad are going through this, or my mom and dad are doing this, or I've got all this pressure at school, or I'm being bullied. And you don't even know that. You just think the kid's just a jerk.
And in 2022, I can't even imagine being a middle school student. When I got bullied in 1988, I didn't have to worry about it being all over Instagram and the comments going like crazy. I didn't have to take the bullying home. I mean, I guess it came home with me, but I went home and it was like, okay, they're off in their homes and all. I wasn't going to hear from them until I saw them at school again. And now it's like, if I turn on social media and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of times parents we can talk about this in a future podcast, but I talk to so many parents who talk to their middle schoolers like they're some alien. And I'm like, no, just talk to them like they're a normal human being. They got all this stuff going on. You just got to remember that their bodies, their minds, everything is growing so rapidly that, sometimes if you ask them, why did you do that? And they say, well, I don't know. It was honestly probably the truth, because they probably didn't know, because so many things are happening in their body and their growth. And so it's just empathy is so incredibly important. Communication helps with that. And I think lastly, builds trust, reduces misunderstanding, eliminate conflict, encourages empathy, and it deepens your friendships.
Oh yeah, for
It
sure.
deepens your friendship. I mean, there are some friends that you have, right, that you will, you know, you won't talk to for months, and the next time you talk to them, it's like you picked right back up. But for the most part, most friendships, I mean, they need communication like we need oxygen. I mean, or communication is the oxygen to our friendships. And so, how can we keep up with them? The problem is, you can't keep up with everybody as much as you can. And so, how do you pick and choose and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think true. Yeah, it's like, obviously your family. You got your family. You're over there going, okay, I need to listen every single day. I need to know what's going on in my kids' lives. I mean, yeah, it is hard. It is hard. But I don't think you have to be 100% in everything that everybody's always doing either.
No. Listening, oh gosh, listening is so key. I was remembering a bunch of years back. I haven't done a great job over the years listening to my wife. So we were at a friend's house.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
And we were moving. We're helping my friend move. And at the very end of the move, the friend says, "Hey, do you guys want this couch?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want the couch. Where are we going to put the couch?" And my wife's like, "Yes, let's take the couch." And I'm like, like, what are we going to do with another couch? I just can't. I can't deal with this. Like, what are we going to do? And so we took the couch. And it wasn't only a couch. It was like the kind that had the bed in it.
Oh no!
So it was like the super heavy.
Is this why you have a bad back?
This is. So we get it in the back of the truck. And my kids are little at this point. I mean, they're like, oh my gosh, 8, 6, and 4 or something. Maybe 9, 5, and 4. I don't know. They're young. And so we get the couch in there. And I think most human beings, when they put the couch in the back of the bed, in the bed of the truck, they would have just put the couch in and slid it all the way in and then tied it all up. I was like, I want to put the truck door up,
The tailgate?
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
The truck door.
I'm tracking. I'm walking with you here. I'm
Truck
listening.
door.
I'm listening.
The tailgate. So I put the truck, I put the couch in, and then I lift it up, and then I close the tailgate, and I'm like, oh man, that's like shooting out the back. So then I turn the couch, so it's like this way in the truck bed, but it's sticking out that way, and I'm like, okay, I can tie this down. It's going to be absolutely fine. Not a problem. So we get in this truck. I borrowed it from a buddy. It's me and my wife. Actually, it's a giant like F-250 or something. So it's me and a kid and then my wife and then 3 kids in the back seat. And at the time, our youngest, Zach, was giving me like a whole play-by-play, through the whole thing. And so we're driving down the road, and he's like, "Dad, the truck's moving." And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "No, the couch is moving."
Couch, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. No, this is not a problem, man. Like, the couch is going to move, aerodynamics. Like, I'm Dad. Like, I'm a man.
I'm not listening to you.
Yeah. Now, before
What
before we left, my wife was like, "Hey, here's what you should do." And I was like, okay. Again, I went to the I know what to do, right?
It's in my DNA.
I'm a very smart individual. So we're driving down the road, we hit a bump, and Zach's like, "Dad, no, the couch is bouncing." And I'm like, "Zach, trust me, man. Like, I'm your father. Like, I can do this. I build things with my hands," or at least I call my dad to build things with his hands for our house. So finally, we're driving down the road, and he's like, "Dad, it's jumping, it's bouncing. And I go to turn around to look as he gets to a crescendo of worry. And he's like, "Dad, the couch took off. It's flying." And we hit a bump, and it came right out of my ties, and it just whoosh, flew out. And I look in the rearview mirror, and I see this couch flying. And I kid you not, it opens, the couch bed opens up, and it lands in the middle of the road. And then the couch bed pillows fall on it. And so we pull over. There's no cars coming, thankfully. We get out, and the boys were like, "That was so awesome." And then my daughters were like, "You really should have listened to Mom." And then I was like, "Hey, Trey, can you help me put it back into the bed of the truck?" And she's like, "Absolutely not. You didn't listen the first time. I'm not going to." I mean, listening, right? Kind of a longer, funnier story, but listening is so incredibly important. I mean, it's just so important.
It's true.
I think there's some questions you can ask yourself to find out if you're a good listener or not.
Okay.
Okay?
This is like a test.
This is like a test.
It's like on like 17 magazine. It's like
yes.
ways to find out if you're a
Yes.
good listener.
Yes, here we go.
Question number one.
Do I cut the other person off a lot during the conversation? I think there's a good way or bad way to cut people off.
Right?
But are you continually that interrupter, you know? Like
Yeah. I think it depends on what you're interrupting with.
that's true.
Clarifying questions.
That's true.
Those are okay sometimes.
Right? But if it's like, oh, I got to tell you about that, you know, like, okay,
Yeah.
question number one. Question number two, am I always trying to finish their sentences? Like, I just won't let them finish anything. No, it's not bad, like, when you get to that, like, deep relationship part when, like, you're finishing each other's...
Sandwiches.
Ah, dang it. We were so close, Dennis. We were so close.
Wait, that was a reference to Frozen. It's in the store in the song. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's been a long time since I've seen Frozen.
Yeah, daughters, you know.
Yeah, you know. And I think maybe another question is like, do I ask the question, but don't wait for them to respond? Have you ever been in a conversation like that, and you're like, you interrupt, you ask the question, and then you don't give them enough time to respond, so then you tell them what they should actually be thinking?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I have somebody that's in my life that will ask a question and then doesn't even give me a chance to respond, and then goes and talks about something completely different.
Right.
It's so frustrating. So
You got to take notes to come back to them. to
yeah,
be
you're like,
hey,
why'd you even ask me that question? You
Here's the
didn't really
17
want to
things.
answer.
Right.
You just wanted to talk about something else. Anyway,
There's a proverb that says, careful words make for a careful life. Careless talk may ruin everything. Careless talk. When I think of careless talk, I think that could be part of that bad listening part, where I'm like, I'm not thinking through like how careful my words are. I'm not thinking through, okay, let them finish. We've talked about this on the podcast before, you know, this 80-20 rule. Like, you know, they talk 80% of the time, we talk 20% of the time, you know, which is like a give or take back and forth. But, you know, the careless talk, it's like, okay, I got to really, my words matter so much that I've got to really choose them really well. Because it's just astounding how unbelievably hurt we can get through careless words. I mean, relationships can be ruined. Relationships can break apart. I mean, things can be dismantled and die just from careless words. It's like, shoo.
yeah. Sometimes I talk too much. Every time we have this podcast, I think, oh man, I probably talk too much.
Yeah. But if we both didn't talk very much, then it would kind of be a boring podcast.
No, I'm not talking about the podcast. Just in life in general,
Oh.
I talk too much. I'm like,
I know,
should
me
probably,
too.
Like, quiet down a little bit, talk less, listen more,
Me
smile
too.
more.
Because by no means are we experts at all. We're just trying to like elevate the importance of healthy
Yes.
communication.
Yeah.
So in our lives, which is awesome, because it's like, okay, we're like put on display, you know, as we're having conversation with our
yeah.
kids or
Yeah, and we listen to the podcast every week,
right.
whether we want to or not. Maybe sometimes 4 times a week.
I mean,
And so
we
so
got to
it's
get
top
some,
of mind for us.
it's top of mind. We
Right.
got to get there. All right, let's talk about a few listening practices.
Okay.
A few listening practices.
All right.
These are some things that are going to help you become a better listener. I mean, we've talked about this before, but you look the person in the eye. We're looking.
Gotcha.
You don't have to stare them down, but you don't want.
blink every once in a while.
That's right. You don't want to do the Jim Halpert to Dwight Schrute thing where you like stare at the top of their forehead, and then the other person's like, "Look me in the eye. Look me in the eye."
Yep.
But it's so important. Like your whole body presence, everything it communicates. Okay, I'm
I think there's a connection you feel.
yes.
Well, you know when you've looked in the eye enough, or whenever you're making that person uncomfortable because you're staring them in the
Yes.
eyes, or when you're not looking enough and you're distracted.
Yes.
You know that. You can
Yeah.
feel that connection.
I think another practice. I think appropriate touch. Appropriate touch. You know, there's sometimes I have conversations with people in Panera, and I'm like, okay, we need to put a buzzer on, you know. So they're like, yeah, you know. But sometimes, you know, there's like that, you know, especially if someone's pouring something out, or if there's a, you know, moment
You know what
where-
annoys me?
Oh.
There's a touch that annoys me. It's whenever somebody is like, "Oh, you know what?" and they pat you.
they do the
And
flash pat
because they've got like something important that they
Yeah.
think is really super important to tell you,
Yep.
and they like do the tap, and I'm like, please don't tap me like that. I think that's an inappropriate touch. It's not really inappropriate, but I don't like it.
I love that.
But yeah.
I think another practice are think of some questions that aren't just the same old bland, how are you? You know, I mean, how are you is a fine question, but, you know, are there better questions to ask that can help you dive into their story a bit more? Because so much about listening is about learning their story. Because when you learn someone's story and then you refer back to their story, I mean, that's when somebody really feels heard.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're like, wait a minute, you remembered that my mom was sick, or you remembered that story when I was in the 4th grade and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's when your relationships flourish at an unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't say many things that I'm like, oh, wow, you know, I'm not the smartest kind of, but I wish we had like a button where I could press where it was like, ah, like that was a decent one.
That was a good one, yeah.
Because when
We'll
we
have to
remember
clip that one
people's
out.
stories, I mean, that's a huge part when we could do that. I think another practice is it's okay sometimes to be silent with each other. There doesn't always have to be like tons and tons and tons, you know, like give it a second. Let the relationship, you know.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said. I mean, there's a thing that we always talk about, ministry of presence, just being with somebody.
Yep.
And sometimes you don't even know, like you said before, we don't listen because we want to fix. So we feel like we have to have something to say. And I've got a whole thing that I could talk about like dumb things that Christians say, like when people are going through
Oh yeah.
bad problems and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you know, God helps those who help themselves. And you're like, that's not even in the Bible. And B, it's bad advice. Like,
Yep.
so like, just,
Yep.
you don't have to always have an answer.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Hang in there.
It's
You'll-
okay to
you
be
know, that
quiet.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Like,
Yeah.
God, all things work together.
Yeah.
Like, don't say that, please, all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, those are some real simple practices. I think the other one, I would highly recommend going to scienceofpeople.com. We'll put it in the show notes. Vanessa Van Edwards, she's written like 3 or 4 amazing books on relationships, and I'll put a link to some incredible questions that you can ask when you are. I mean, just incredible. Like questions you can ask an extrovert friend, questions you can ask an introvert friend. I mean, it's just absolutely huge. Because like as I parent each of my kids, the questions that I ask my 22-year-old are different than the ones I ask my 20-year-old. Because the 22-year-old's an extrovert, 20-year-old's an introvert. You know, I'm not going to ask the introvert, you know, like the same. Like I want to think through those questions. And so a great practice is having great questions in your arsenal. Before we leave, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he had this great quote: "Listening can be a greater service than speaking." Listening can be a greater service than speaking. It's so hard for all of us because we're communicators. We want to talk. We want to get it. But this whole podcast was basically hopefully challenging you to go, okay, hey, how can I look at my life as a listener, and how can I do a better job with doing that?
Yeah, we all can use that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Speak with People. We hope that you were encouraged. We hope that you laughed. We hope that you were inspired to use your words really, really well, because words matter. And we hope that this was a time that will help you become a more effective communicator in your day-to-day life. Don't forget to check out thespeakerconference.com. March 21 to 23 will be here before you know it. We absolutely can't wait for this conference. If you deliver presentations for work, if you speak from a stage, if you influence from behind a camera, you want to become a more effective, empathetic, captivating communicator, join us in Clearwater Beach. 2.5 days. Go to the website, check it all out. And thank you so much for sharing this podcast with your friends. It's really like the best marketing we could ever do or ask, because if this is helping you, please share it on social media, text it to your friends and family, and that would be a giant help for us as we encourage people to use their words wisely. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.